Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this little video and talk about the subject that I found to be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video, I believe, by the boxing channel or the fight channel known as Fight Hub TV. Now, I'm not quite sure if they do MMA fights as well. I'm pretty sure they mainly do boxing fights, but every once in a while they have a good little interview that I like to review. And every single time, Mr. Demetrius Boo Andrade, as of course you see right there in the picture, who of course was a former two-weight division world champion. Of course, he was a champion at 154 pounds once upon a time, and then of course later on a champion at 160 pounds. Now, of course, he tried at 168 pounds, at least against one of the more talented fighters there, Mr. David Benavidez, and of course, he was not able to pull through, which is pretty much what I had predicted because I thought that the size was going to be a little bit of a factor, and on top of that, I just had never seen Demetrius Boo Andrade really in the ring against anyone that particularly talented before, so I didn't really know how he was going to react. And for all intents and purposes, just my personal view, and I know that a lot of people, are going to disagree with me, Demetrius Andrade might be the most overrated personal talent that I've seen, probably of this era. And don't get it twisted, I think that Andrade is a relative talent. I think that he's a great talent. I think that he's someone that was always an A-grade level fighter. But when I heard people try to put him on this level of of the Floyd Mayweather Jr., overall type of skills and all this other stuff, I've never personally seen Demetrius Boo Andrade on that level. I've just never seen him on that level. And when he was going into the David Benavidez fight, and you had people saying, oh, people are really going to see Demetrius Andrade, for what he is. Demetrius Andrade is 10 times better than Caleb Plant, blah, blah, blah. Demetrius Andrade put up a fight for about 2.5 rounds, and then after that pretty much got completely decimated, and he got beat up so bad that the fight had to be stopped after 6 rounds. And don't get it twisted, once again, I don't blame Demetrius Andrade completely for that. That was his first time fighting at 168 at least. I mean, well, maybe that wasn't the first time fighting at 168, but it definitely was the first time fighting a talent on the level like that. And Demetrius Andrade, I mean, not only was he fighting a 168 pounder, but he was really fighting a guy that probably should be fighting at the 175-pound weight division. I mean, it's no offense against David Benavidez, but that dude's a weight bully at 168. And by no means is that me trying to state that Canelo Alvarez should have not fought him. It's very clear that Canelo Alvarez was avoiding that fight overall for a little bit of time. And I like Canelo Alvarez as a fighter, but at the end of the day, if you're going to fight or if you're going to keep the belts there, then you have to fight the more elite contenders that prove themselves. And Canelo Alvarez has fought a lot of great contenders and a lot of great fighters over the course of his career. But within the past few years, he has been doing some avoiding. It just is what it is. But anyways, once again, a lot of people are talking about the potentiality of there being a Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Bud Crawford fight, which of course a certain amount of the Terrence Bud Crawford fans have really asked for. And Terrence Bud Crawford has really been asking for himself because I think that Terrence Bud Crawford realizes, and I think Canelo finally realizes that, there might be possibly something in it for him, or at least he can get a certain amount of people to possibly acquiesce if he whoops Terrence Bud Crawford's ass. He can acquiesce to a certain amount of people stating that he is the best or the greatest fighter of this generation. Now, not everyone is going to acquiesce to that, of course, especially not the Terrence Bud Crawford fans, because if Crawford, of course, moves up and possibly loses to Canelo or gets knocked out or gets beaten very badly, which is very possible because, of course, Canelo is going to have a clear size advantage, at least in terms of the girth and the weight. Of course, not the height nor the reach, but in terms of the weight, yes, Canelo will have the size advantage. And that's why I say Terrence Bud Crawford is pretty much in a win-win situation because if he ends up beating Canelo, he's up there with pretty much any fighter within the history, at least in terms of dominance or skills with what he's been able to do. But if he loses, then he pretty much gets the size excuse. So there pretty much is no pressure for Terrence Bud Crawford for the Canelo Alvarez fight. And that's why Canelo was a little bit apprehensive to take it at first. But a lot of people have been talking about it. And Demetrius Boo Andrade, once again, do I think that he was a little bit overrated for his career? Yes, especially by his fan base. But don't get it twisted. Demetrius Andrade is a relatively talented boxer. In fact, he's a very talented boxer. He had a great amateur pedigree, and on top of that, he has done some stuff in the pros. He never really beat anybody, but, he has, become a two-weight division champion. And to be fair, it's not completely the man's fault either. He did turn down the Jermell Charlo fight eventually, and I understand he thought that he was getting lowballed, but I think that would have been the best point for his career to take the Jermell Charlo fight. It is what it is. He didn't really see the forest through the trees on that one, but it's whatever. And of course, he possibly could have fought some other guys, but he just didn't do it. But I'll give the man his credit. he was able to do what Jamal Charlo barked and claimed he was going to do, which is that he was going to go up to 168 and knock David Benavidez out, which I knew Jamal Charlo was full of shit, because for anyone that knows Jamal Charlo, he's all bark and no bite. He claims that he's going to do this, he claims he's going to do that, and he never does shit. He always claims that he wants to get in the ring with Demetrius Andrade or Canelo or these guys, and he never tries to get in the ring with any of them. It just is what it is. But anyways, to continue the video, Demetrius Andrade is not only going to be talking about possibly Canelo versus Crawford, but he's also going to be talking about, I believe, Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez if they ever potentially fight. And he believes, I believe, that Canelo does not beat David Benavidez, and he also believes that Crawford does not beat Canelo, possibly because a little bit of the size combined with the skills. And what I'll say about Andrade is this: I like him a lot as a commentator. I think that he's a very colorful personality. He seems to be a relatively good and funny person, and he's a guy that seems to be a relatively likable personality. I think his career has been a little bit overrated, and his skill set has been a little bit overrated. But as a commentator, he comes across as a decent dude, and he comes across as a good commentator. I like a lot of the points that he usually brings to the table. But anyways, we're going to see what Demetrius Andrade has to say. Let's get into it.
What would happen, in your opinion, if they were to fight? Because a lot of people do favor Canelo. A lot of people favor Benavidez. They mention it as a true 50-50 fight between the two.
Nah, Canelo's not beating him.
Wow.
I don't see how Canelo's beating him. Canelo's smaller than me, shorter than me. And I was.
Thank you, Mr. Demetrius Bubo Andrade. Thank you for saying that, because I get these fanatics over on the Come On Mine channel and say, oh, Canelo, overall, he got completely exposed against Dimitri Bivol. Dude, Canelo Alvarez is not a natural super middleweight, especially a light heavyweight. Like, dude, Canelo is 5'7.5" with a 71-inch arm reach. Like, people don't understand how great of a fighter you have to be in order to beat people that are 5'11" or up, with a longer reach than you, and on top of that, especially bigger height than you, that are relatively talented A-grade level fighters. Like, people don't understand, when Canelo was in his fight against Golovkin, he was smaller than Golovkin. There was a noticeable size difference. When he was in the ring against Danny Jacobs, he was smaller than Danny Jacobs. When he was in the ring against Caleb Plant, he was smaller than Caleb Plant. He was smaller than Callum Smith. He was smaller than Sergey the Crusher Kovalev. He was smaller than Jaime Munguia. Like, people don't understand this. And when Jamal Charlo moved up in weight to fight Canelo Alvarez, it pretty much was very similar to when Floyd Mayweather Jr. moved up Juan Manuel Marquez. To where, yes, Floyd was adjusted to a new weight, but it was really a weight that, weight-wise, he didn't really belong in the first place. Except for Canelo, it's even a little bit worse, because he doesn't have Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s good height and dimensions for that weight class, having a 5'8" height and a 72-inch reach. Canelo Alvarez is even shorter and not as lengthy as Floyd Mayweather. And is that me stating overall that Canelo was greater than Floyd? No, that's not what I'm saying. I believe that Floyd is greater, and I believe that he's more skilled than Canelo. But once again, people always get on this bullshit about how Canelo fought all these bums and, how he's so big and all that stuff. Dude, Canelo is a middleweight. Like, people don't understand overall. He never belonged at light heavyweight in the first place, man. And when you take a look at Andrade, when he fought David Benavidez, he damn near was 200 pounds. That's why I say, when you talk about these guys that also started off at 154 and followed Canelo Alvarez, dude, they're bigger than him, man. Jamal Charlo is bigger than Canelo. Danny Jacobs is bigger than Canelo. Jamal Charlo is pretty much the same size. When you talk about Demetrius Andrade, he's bigger than Canelo. These guys, if they really, were to put their weight up there, they're heavier than him if they go up to 168, man. They're bigger than him.
Do what I had to do, whatever, but that weight and his length, and he knows how to throw like punches and bunches, it's going to be a hard task for Canelo. And then David's not somebody that's going to let up on you either. He's not.
David Benavidez, in order for him to let up on a fighter, he's going to have to get in the ring with a fighter to where he actually respects their power to a decent degree, and on top of that, they're a high-level IQ fighter. David Benavidez is a very gifted fighter. He does have a certain amount of flaws. Sometimes he can square up a little bit too much. He fights in the 50-50 range way too often. He's improved his head movement, but his head movement isn't the best, and his feet definitely can be a little bit clunky, and he can shuffle them a little bit. So David Benavidez definitely has a lot of flaws that certain people can expose. But just because overall, you have a certain amount of flaws, even that many flaws, does not mean that you're a quote-unquote average boxer per se. Like what I, took a look at in my last video, and we looked at a video by a channel in John Boxing Pound for Pound the Best, where he said that Canelo is an average level boxer because of this, and this. Canelo, in terms of an all-around boxer, he's a level or two above David Benavidez, if not even a little bit more, just in terms of the amount of skills that he has. But David Benavidez is also about 6'2", and he has a longer reach than Canelo Alvarez, and he's going to be heavier than Canelo Alvarez, probably by about 20 pounds. So Demetrius Andrade, with the point that he brings up, I do have to agree that it would definitely be a very tall task, and I'm not really quite sure if Canelo, at this point in time in his career, can really beat someone like a David Benavidez, someone that really belongs at the light heavyweight division anyway. Now, maybe if it was Canelo from about, the years when he was beating guys like Caleb Plant and Callum Smith, yeah, I probably would have favored Canelo then. But if you're talking about Canelo Alvarez right now, who is visibly slower and someone overall that clearly is breaking down as a fighter, I would not favor him to beat David Benavidez, in my personal view. Now, David Morrell, there's a possibility, because I think David Morrell is still learning the boxing game a little bit, and I think that David Benavidez, even though there's certain things that, David Benavidez, and David Morrell may be able to take advantages of, I think that David Morrell may have a little bit more of a beatable style for Canelo than David Benavidez, which of course seems a little bit counterintuitive to say, because I've always said, and a certain amount of people have also said, that the way to beat Canelo, in my personal view, you do have to be an all-time great level boxer in order to beat Canelo. In fact, not only do you have to really be an all-time great level boxer, you have to be debatably the greatest of your generation in order to really beat Canelo, or significantly bigger than him, or he has to be in a weight class where he doesn't belong, a.k.a. Floyd Mayweather, a.k.a. that, what's his name, Dimitri Bivol. And of course, I thought Golovkin won the first fight as well. But, thing is, overall, once again, is that Canelo Alvarez, he's going to have to be in the ring with someone more than likely that has quick feet and someone that can move around him. And on top of that, make him respect his power like that of a Dimitri Bivol, or respect their power. David Benavidez has very good power, but his power is really more size-based than what it is actually natural in terms of actual thudding power. David Benavidez has great power for that weight class because he's really not supposed to be there. David Benavidez against Vosdick, we still seen that power, but it was nowhere near as destructive because, like I said, and I told people this for a long time, when Benavidez moves up the weight classes, he is not going to have the same level of power because he is not this A+ level puncher. He's just not. He's a dude that has A grade level power or A- level power. He gets you with punches and bunches, and there are certain fighters that are like that. David Benavidez is one of those fighters. Now, if you talk about Artur Beterbiev, for example, Beterbiev is a dude that has A+ level power. Like, he even taps you throughout the certain fight, and even Dimitri Bivol will tell you every punch that Beterbiev landed was stiff and hard.
He had
Pause.
no distance as far as this fighters that's you can jab with each other. Like, you can sit back, what distance, get it. No, he's on your ass once he's he starts warming up, and because he.
But if you were to ask me, would I give Canelo more of a chance to beat David Benavidez than Demetrius Bubba Andrade? No doubt about it. No offense against Andrade, but we've never really seen a sample size to where he was really able to beat any particular great fighter. I mean, he doesn't even have a name on his resume that would even be on the level of a Janabek, who I think is an A-grade level fighter. He doesn't even have someone on his resume like that. I mean, the best fighters that he has on his resume is Vanes Martirosyan. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I really can't remember shit after that. Other than Vanes Martirosyan, I can't really remember a whole lot of real top-tier level contenders that Demetrius Bubba Andrade has really ever fought. And like I said, that's not completely his fault. I do think he's been avoided to a certain degree, but there's also certain times where he turned down fights that he shouldn't have. Not saying that he was ducking those fighters necessarily, but, he missed opportunities. So you got to be smart about your career, But, like I said, Andrade, he never really had the greatest of gas tanks. There were certain times where he did tire out in the second half of the fight, especially at 160 pounds. So I wasn't as shocked at all that he only lasted about 6 rounds, at least taking a look at it in hindsight. And on top of that, the man, once again, people tried to say that this dude was 10 times better than Caleb Plant. I mean, there's certain things that he might do a little bit better than Caleb Plant, but does he really have more power than Caleb Plant? No, not really. Is he really someone that is severely faster than Caleb Plant? No. Is he someone that overall is really that much better defensively than Caleb Plant? No, he's not. He gets hit way too often, and I've seen Demetrius Andrade drop multiple times in his career and shaken and hurt multiple times in his career, and that's even against bums like Liam Williams. So once again, that, I wasn't really truly shocked about that. Andrade is a guy that, once again, is very talented, but he's always been overrated.
He's big. He's long. He can protect himself.
And that's why Caleb Plant was able to give David Benavidez 10 times more the fight than that of a Demetrius Boo Andrade. I mean, partially because Caleb Plant was also adjusted to the weight class. But if you really take a look at it, Andrade is the same exact fucking size as a Caleb Plant. That's why, when you talk about Charlo or Andrade moving up, those guys are weight bullies, man. Like, no offense, but Andrade's like, what, 6'1", 6'2", with the 73, 74-inch arm reach. Man, probably your height is about 190 pounds. Like, dude, you really should be fighting at super middleweight.
Look, for me, his shit was like, it was down to his head. How can you score shots with that if you're not a big, powerful puncher to like wear and tear him down?
But Canelo Alvarez is a big, powerful puncher, Demetrius Andrade, and that's the difference between Canelo Alvarez and you. Canelo has extraordinary power, even at this stage in his career. At least he has very good power. Not quite as good as what it once was, but still very good power. You've never really had elite level power. You have good power, but it's not great power. I would say that your power is on the same level as a Caleb Plant.
I don't blame him.
And Demetrius Andrade, even with some of the shots that he was hitting David Benavidez with, Benavidez was not backing up at all during that fight. That's why I say this narrative that, the Andrade fans or these certain people would always say that, oh, Andrade has the potential to knock Canelo Alvarez out. With what? When has Demetrius Andrade ever showed that he has A-grade level punching power? Like, all this shit, overall, once again, who has Demetrius Andrade ever knocked out? I mean, first of all, who's the man ever fought that really overall had any legitimacy? That's the first point. And secondly, who the fuck has he ever knocked out that really had any legitimacy? No offense, but it's like, it is what it is. Like, people kept trying to act like this dude was 10 times more talented than Caleb Plant, please.
To fight David. Say, Canelo, stay away from David. Don't do it. Let me get out of it with that. Don't do it. Listen,
No, you need to stay away from David Benavidez Andrade. What you need to do is take your ass either to 160 or stay at 168 and fight guys like Caleb Plant. That's a fight that would be great. That's really a fight that would determine overall the career arcs kind of both fighters. Or you need to fight someone else at 168, or you need to possibly fight someone at 160 like a Janabek. That's what you need to do. You don't belong at 168. I mean, in terms of size-wise, you do, but in terms of skill-wise, your skill set is nowhere near what a certain amount of fans overall really tried to state that it was. And on top of that, he really has never had a super great gas tank, at least overall in some of his, more challenging fights. It just is what it is. I've seen him tire down the stretch multiple times in fights against Jack Colque and also against Liam Williams and also other fighters. This is not the first time that I've seen this. So, it just is what it is.
Longer than Canelo. And like, I don't know if Canelo can. That's a big boy, man. I don't care the skill.
But to talk about Demetrius Andrade's point, even though I think Canelo Alvarez is better or more skilled than Andrade in most categories, other than maybe the quick feet, the thing is that I also agree with Andrade. I think that Canelo Alvarez would have a great amount of problems, especially at this point in time in his career, really against any light heavyweight in the world, including David Benavidez. And I think that Benavidez, I don't think that he's on the level of a Dimitri Bivol nor an Archie Beterbiev, but I think that he's big enough and good enough to possibly beat Canelo Alvarez, at least possibly, especially at this stage in his career.
You gotta really have the right skill set, movement, IQ, sharpness to like beat David. Unless you're this,
well, you can move against David Benavidez, but I think how David Benavidez is gonna get beat is like how Triple G got beat against Canelo Alvarez. You got to push him back because David Benavidez, even though I'm sure that he can fight a little bit on the back foot, he's not going to be the best fighter on the back foot. He squares up very often. He's not the best overall on the back foot. He's a guy that really is going to try to break you down. And I think that he's gotten better. I used to think of him as more of a completely one-dimensional fighter. I don't think he's a completely one-dimensional fighter, especially anymore, but he's not a guy that can fight super great unless he's going to really try to push you forward and break you down incrementally over the fight. David Benavidez is never going to be a guy that fights great in multiple styles. He's just not. He's not that type of fighter. He's pretty much of that same mold of the George Foremans and, and the Iron Mike Tysons and certain guys. Those guys want to break you down. They want to break you.
David just fights the next biggest man in the 75. It's going to be a different story. But at 168, that's how you have to be to beat him. But 75 is a whole different playing field. You got some heavy hitters out there.
Yeah, you might be then. Well, that's probably, you're saying, hey, there's a reason why Canelo's not fighting, David, because of the things that you just mentioned. Like, well, that's in your opinion that there's the reason.
I knew the reason too. David was never on my radar. I was looking at him like, yeah, that's gonna be a bad motherfucker right there. Whoever fights him, it happened to be me. That's how sometimes the world.
Well, you knew overall that you had to fight David Benavidez because that was the only possible chance that you were going to get Canelo. And once again, pretty much everyone around those weight classes, they want Canelo Alvarez because they know that if they beat Canelo, that they're gonna be remembered for legacy, and not only that, but they're gonna be remembered for a big ass payday. And I'm not stating that Demetrius Andrade only wanted the payday. I think that he truly believed that he could beat Canelo and that he had a great chance. And give overall Demetrius Andrade credit. He tried to make the Canelo fight, or at least, he chased after him at least a little bit. And Canelo Alvarez pretty much declined, or he said, no. He said, I'm not really particularly interested. And I got to be honest, I don't really particularly blame Canelo Alvarez too much for that. And the reason why I don't blame him too much for that is because Demetrius Andrade, in order for him to really get that fight, one could make an argument that he could have built his profile up a little bit more. Now, of course, certain people will make the point about, well, of course, Canelo fought other guys that were weaker than Andrade, so why not Andrade? Well, it's very obvious that Canelo probably looked at Andrade and said, you're a little bit too much trouble for what I think you're potentially worth. You might be a little bit too big of a risk for the potential reward that I'm going to get from you. So if you want to get the fight with me, then you're going to have to build up the program, or you're going to have to build up the fight. And I think that overall that the opportunity was, of course, against David Benavidez, and of course he failed, but it is what it is, But, that's not the first time that a fighter has done that. Mayweather, of course, did that. Other fighters have done that where they did not want to take on both of those fighters because they thought it was going to be a little bit too damaging or take a little bit too much off of their career if they fought both of those guys. So they said, okay, well, what I'm going to do pretty much is take credit for both of those guys, and whoever ends up winning the fight, if I end up beating that fighter, whoever wins the fight, I can basically take credit for beating both of those guys. That's what Mayweather did when Canelo Alvarez beat Austin Trout.
Obstacles, it just our paths collided, and that was fine, and I was fine with it. I'm not.
And once again, Mr. Demetrius Booba Andrade, let me give you a round of applause. Let me also give you a certain amount of credit for at least taking the fight, because you didn't have to take the fight. You could have still stayed at 160, fought a whole bunch of bums. I mean, of course, you could have fought Janabek, but to be fair, Demetrius Andrade was also in a very similar situation. Why the hell would you want to fight Janabek when potentially you can get more of a payday and possibly the Canelo Alvarez fight? If you possibly beat David Benavidez, might as well, because if you end up losing to a guy like Janabek, that pretty much is a career destroyer. Why the hell would you want to fight some Eastern European fighter from Kazakhstan that isn't really super well known, has a great amateur pedigree, and a dude that's very dangerous and decently athletic? Why the hell would you want to fight that guy? So in my view, it was actually the right move that Demetrius Booba Andrade made. Unfortunately, of course, for him, it did not turn out, and to be honest with you, he really did not put on that good of a performance other than the first 2 rounds. But he tried. And once again, he did something that Jamal Charlo was not able to do. Because remember, Jamal Charlo kept yapping his fucking mouth about how he was going to go up there and do all this shit. Jamal Charlo is one of the biggest yappers of all. He's one of the biggest. He is the prime example of a dog that is all bark and no bite. That's all Jamal Charlo is. He talks all this shit, gets drunk, gets high on a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, talks all this shit, doesn't even remember what the fuck he said tomorrow, and then realizes that he don't want to get in the ring with those guys. Like, I got so sick and tired of hearing Jamal Charlo talk on a daily basis. And then you got, this Ninja Turtle looking ass Dante's Boxing Nation saying overall, oh, well, we got to give Jamal Charlo credit for, facing, David Benavidez or blah, blah, blah. When the man doing damn well that Jamal Charlo had never fulfilled any of his former promises anyway. Like, come on.
I'm not scared of a fight. Is pretty much is what I'm saying. Let's fight. You might have the upper hand, but you know what? I have the skills, ability, the will, the mindset to put it out there. Yo, people lose in life or win in life, whatever. I look at it as a win-win. Nothing. It was a great match. I loved it. I got good experience being in the ring because of I'm barely in the ring. And it was good. I had fun at the end of the day too. Even though I was going through whatever I was going through, I try to keep myself in the good spirit. But
touching just lastly on your perspective on David and Canelo, do you think David stops Canelo then, based on what you're saying and what you've seen?
I mean, if you watch David's fights, he's punching in bunches. He usually does that. He usually gets to overwhelm you. Plus at the 168 pound, he walks in that ring big.
Absolutely. He does walk in that ring big. Absolutely. I agree with that. David Benavidez is a dude overall that, once again, that dude is huge. Like I said, he at a minimum really should be fighting at 175. So once again, David Benavidez is a big dude. I agree.
I don't care what.
But that being said, Mr. Demetrius Bubba Andrade, you can't tell me that you're really that much smaller than Caleb Plant, if smaller than him at all. Actually, you're taller than Caleb Plant. And I think that you have a bigger reach than him. And when I take a look at Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Plant, I mean, Caleb Plant, of course, is more accustomed there. But when you talk about it, Andrade is really pretty much the same size as Caleb Plant. So if Caleb Plant, once again, if Andrade is allegedly supposed to be this guy that is 10 times bigger when it comes to, 10 times more talented, then you should put up at least a better fight. At least should have been a 7 rounds to 5 fight, but it wasn't.
Anybody says what he says, I know last time he said something about, I was only 180 pounds. Bullshit. You was when he fought the 175 guy.
Oh, Vostek.
Yeah.
Agreed. I agree with that. I don't know who David Benavidez is trying to fool, but it's very obvious that David Benavidez gets a little bit sensitive overall about the quote-unquote weight bully accusations. Listen, at the end of the day, it just is what it is. You're big for the fucking weight class. But the reason why David Benavidez is getting sensitive about that shit is because he knows that there's a little bit of truth in there. Because he is a little bit of a weight bully at 168. There's no fucking way that you should be 6'2", rehydrating at about 190 pounds plus, and you're fighting at the 168 pound weight division. Like, come on, man.
It's a big boy. He got a lot of weight.
Like, that weight class is more for Demetrius Bubba Andrade. That weight class is more for Jamal Charlo. That weight class is more for Caleb Plant. That's who that weight class really is more for. And Canelo Alvarez, of course, he's not really a natural 168 pounder, but because of his, skill and talent, he can handle it. But, David Benavidez is not a natural 168 pounder.
You can put on his body frame, no muscle. He's one of them freaky genetic kids, like no muscle, power, speed. And then he can put the weight on easily. Take it off the right way through training certain people, and then once he do, whoop, swole right back up. Look, Member was in his corner. Member was in Edgar's corner when it came to their biggest test and biggest fight with me, with David, now Edgar with Canelo. So it was just like they picked up, whoever they picked, and they put him on, put that weight on, and he was a big boy. Canelo's a good fighter. I have nothing against Canelo as far as his boxing.
Canelo Alvarez isn't just a good fighter; he's a great fighter. I would say that you, Demetrius Andrade, are a good or relatively great fighter. Canelo wasn't just a great fighter; he's an all-time great level fighter. But I understand what Andrade is saying.
I do have things against him as far as like why he be talking shit to me and why he hasn't stepped up to the plate and fought me. Right, somebody that became 2 divisional world champion recently fought David Benavidez, trying to get all the big fights. It's like, why are you giving these other opportunities to these guys that hadn't?
Now, if one of you guys overall can let me know on this, because I've been, I've been hearing news on this, but I do remember at one point in time that there was a little bit of a negotiation, or at least a little bit of a talk for Canelo to possibly be in negotiations for Andrade to fight once upon a time for, I believe, his WBO middleweight title. But for whatever reason, it fell apart. I don't really remember why, but, anyway.
Has really never done anything. Doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, like you said, he is his own boss. He can choose. Has more power to him. But
well, no offense against you, Mr. Demetrius Bubba Andrade, but had you really seen the forest through the trees a little bit earlier on in your career and seen how big that Jamal Charlo fight really would have been for your career, I think overall that you would have had more of a chance to get the Canelo Alvarez fight. Because once again, a certain amount of people overall, and people must realize this when they're in the boxing game, a certain win overall in your career, even at the beginning of your career, it can do so much more for you in the future. Because Jamal Charlo, like a certain amount of people were really talking about him because of his win over Julian J. Rock Williams. Now, you take a look at that win today, of course, it doesn't really age quite as well as what it did back then. But Julian J. Rock Williams was looked at as an A- level fighter, at least at that current moment in time. And Jamal Charlo, of course, a certain amount of people did not really believe that he was actually going to win that fight. And that was a very close and competitive fight, of course, until Jamal Charlo ended up knocking his ass out, then that pretty much carried Jamal Charlo for the rest of his career because Jamal Charlo was always more talked about after that than Demetrius Bubba Andrade. because Andrade never really had fought anybody before. And I understand that that's not completely his fault, but had he fought Jermell Charlo and actually beat Jermell Charlo, do you understand how much more that we would have been talking about Demetrius Andrade and how much more of a fan base that he probably would have had and how much more pressure there would have been on Canelo or Jermell Charlo or other fighters to fight him? So once again, very unfortunate, but that was Andrade's stupid ass mistake.
You don't want to like get in there with like great fights too, but that's his word, his opinion on that. But yeah, I don't think Canelo's beating David. I don't think anybody, clearly nobody at 168 right now is beating him. But
well, that's because David Benavidez is not really a 168 pounder. The only fighter that really has a chance is Canelo Alvarez. Once again, that shows you the skill level of a Canelo Alvarez to where pretty much a 5'7" dude, overall is the only guy that really has a chance against David Benavidez, and he's really not even supposed to be a 168 either, to be quite honest with you.
Well, it was a 168. Now they move up to 175, which that seems like their proper weight category. If he's not there, and I move up to 168, who I have to worry about?
And if Andrade versus Canelo Alvarez were to happen at this stage in their career, I'm not really quite sure if that still would be the same level of win, of course, because Andrade, of course, was just recently beat, by David Benavidez and beat pretty badly, especially in those last 3 rounds. But, when it comes down to it, Demetrius Andrade, I just don't think that he would be the same fighter. I really don't think that it would really be worth anything unless Andrade was actually able to string together a couple of decent wins, maybe like a Edgar Berlanga or a Jaime Munguia or something like that, and then on top of that, a Caleb Plant. Then, they might possibly make the Canelo versus Andrade fight, and it might be a decent fight. 2 aging fighters.
Well, like I said,
if he's not there, let's make these fights happen now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of openings there for you.
Yeah, let's tangle. What are we waiting for?
So there's talk too of like Canelo and Crawford. Like you're mentioning that you feel like David's just too big, too young, just too much overall. Like, is that kind of the same thing with the Crawford and Canelo because of the weight classes, the weight between them?
Yeah, I believe so. Listen, I love Crawford. He's a good friend. We reach out to each other. We've been travel the world through the amateur program. He see me beat people up. I see him beat people up. He see me get beat up. I got beat up. We both, whatever. Everybody.
Well, no offense against you, Mr. Demetrius Andrade, but and once again, I'm not trying to roast a man here. Demetrius Andrade is a very decent dude, it appears, and he's a very talented fighter. But I mean, people talk about Vasily Lomachenko being quote-unquote a career failure because he apparently lost all his big fights, or he didn't achieve greatness in professional boxing, quote-unquote. We need to talk about Demetrius Andrade. I mean, at least Lomachenko beat Walters and Jorge Linares and Gary Russell Jr. and Rigondeaux when all those guys were big fights. Demetrius Andrade, and once again, I've pulled up the stat multiple times, he doesn't have one champion or one former champion that he's ever beaten on his resume. Not one. Like, the man doesn't even have like a David Lemieux on his resume. He doesn't even have an Andy Lee. He doesn't have shit on his resume.
The stories can go on, but yeah, when it comes to weight and power, man, that shit is real.
Agreed. And for those of you that recently heard Israel Madrimov state something about Terrence Bud Crawford, he basically stated that Terrence Bud Crawford, that his power in that fight was regular. And he said that was to be expected, of course, because Crawford was moving up in weight. And, overall, he was the quote-unquote bigger fighter. Now, in my personal view, Terrence Bud Crawford is really about the same size as the Israel Madrimov. But to be fair, that was the first time ever moving up to 154. So I give the man a little bit of a break. But also, what I will state is this. For all these channels going on about the Tyson Fury glove situation when that was going on with Wilder and, all this other bullshit, about quote-unquote glove gates and all sort of stuff, what's very particularly interesting is that there was something up with Terrence Bud Crawford's gloves to where they actually had to change the gloves overall and apparently put him, I believe, in a new pair. Now, if I'm misinformed in any way, someone can correct me, but from what I remember, something was up with the gloves and they had to give him a new pair of gloves. So Terrence Bud Crawford was not actually able to use his original gloves. And this is the second time that I've seen something that's a little bit fucking weird with Terrence Bud Crawford's gloves. Because for those of you that also remember against David Avanesian, he didn't just have one glove that busted open against David Avanesian. He had two gloves that busted open against David Avanesian. When the hell have you ever seen that in a fight before, to where both gloves in a professional boxing fight, a professional bout, have actually busted open? Is it very possible that Terence Crawford has been rearranging the padding, or possibly overall once again, maybe taking a little bit out? It's possible. And I'm not stating that he's the only all-time grade level fighter that's maybe done that. I've heard rumors of other great fighters doing that. But, Terence Crawford, it's just very interesting how all these LDBC and new media channels, they love to talk about Fury allegedly cheating, but none of it is talked about with Terence Crawford. When 2 times, there was something fishy a little bit with his gloves.
And then skills too, skill level too. Like Canelo's not no pushover. Look what he did to the little girl Charlo. You know what I'm saying? Like Charlo, the little big bad.
He said, "Look what Canelo did to the little go Charlo." And you know what? Listen, Demetrius Andrade obviously has a little bit of a rivalry with them, because they were always kind of in the same weight class a little bit, and whatever. But I mean, well, first of all, Andrade, you could have fought Jamel Charlo a while ago, but I mean, thing is that you could have fought him a while ago. You thought overall that you were getting lowballed, and I get it. I understand the point of understand your worth to a certain degree, but that was not the right time, man.
Wolf, and he ran the whole night off of a couple of hooks.
And I agree. Jamel Charlo did run the whole entire night. Demetrius Andrade knows what that was. Like I said, if you're smart enough, or if you know boxing for a very long time, you know overall what that was. Jamel Charlo came in there for the fucking payday. He came in there for the payday. He didn't come in there for anything else. He treated Canelo Alvarez like he was a master the whole entire time throughout the press conference. He treated him with the utmost respect when Jamel Charlo usually talks a whole lot of shit or gets in this super aggressive mood. And he basically treated Canelo Alvarez overall like he was his CEO. Like his president of operations. He treated Canelo Alvarez overall like he was his boss, his manager. And he got handled like him. He got handled like Canelo was his manager.
Canelo threw a couple of hooks and he just ran all night. It was like, where's
Jamel Charlo was running from round 1. It was very obvious that Jamel Charlo had no fucking plan to win that fight whatsoever. Or if he did, he was going to give the bare minimum, and then as soon as if he was going to see what he thought was going to happen against Canelo, then he pretty much was going to book it and try to survive the whole entire fight. He didn't try to win that fight. You take a look at that fight. Jamel Charlo doesn't sit down on barely any of his fucking punches throughout that whole entire fight. Disgraceful performance.
Where's that? Let's fight. I think Crawford has the skills, but when it comes to start getting shots or blocking them power shots, and Canelo knows how to move too. He has agility. It's not like...
Agreed. Once again, you got these people out here that, sit here and say like, oh, well, Canelo was a quote-unquote average boxer. At least some of these dipshit fans, especially from the LDBC and new media. Right, he's 5'7" with a 70-minute arm reach, and he's beating all these A-grade level names like Caleb Plant and, even Sergey the Crusher Kovalev, even though he was a bit older, of course, and a little bit more wore down. Obviously, he was not quite the same top 10 pound-per-pound level fighter, but he was still an A- level champion probably at that given moment in time. He was coming off of 2 decent wins. And then, of course, he beat guys like Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Gennady Golovkin, Trout, Araceli Lara, all these other names, Cotto, and he's just apparently this average boxer. Like, okay.
Robot, I mean, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but that's a huge fight. A lot of fans want to see it. Like even a lot of trainers I've spoken to have said and feel that Terence...
This man just got up off the camera and left. I mean, I'm sure the man is still going to talk, but just fucking got up real quick. They even say, I'll be right back.
Because of his skill level, can bridge the gap between weight and make it even, because he's so damn good and his IQ is so damn good.
My opinion is my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think Crawford can beat Canelo.
And this is very interesting. You're not going to hear Dante's Boxing Nation, once again, that dude, that snake. Once again, you're not going to hear him overall, post any of these videos where Andrade claims that he believes that Canelo wins, or that Madrimov claims that Canelo wins, or some of these other guys. You're not going to hear them state that. He's only going to post videos where there's certain people that state that they believe that Canelo loses, to make it seem like Canelo is this quote-unquote overrated fighter. And then if Crawford ends up losing to Canelo Alvarez, all he's going to claim is that, oh, well, Canelo was just way too big. That's why I say, man, you got to be careful of these guys, because these guys are just nothing but super duper loudmouth politicians.
But do I think he can give him a good fight? And I'll be sitting there rooting for Crawford all day. I'm put all my money. I'm always going to bet on black, always. But in reality of it, I just think Canelo knows how to fight. He knows how to come in big, and he can throw.
And let me tell you what Demetrius Andrade think, I actually don't think that that's harmful whatsoever. I think overall supporting your people or betting on your people or betting on black fighters, but giving an accurate representation, I don't think that that's bad at all. You know, even stating that you believe that Crawford could win. But there are certain fighters, for example, that pick fights, or, you know, there are certain people that pick fight opinions or fight analyses, or, you know, make fight predictions completely based off a race. And that's when you start to lose a little bit of credibility. Like Deontay Wilder, for example, whenever they would ask him, you know, who do you think is going to win this fight? But to be fair, I mean, that's not super harmful, because, I mean, Deontay Wilder, he's not really an analyst. You know, but it was very clear that Wilder, a lot of times he would pick fights, if you ever watch some of his videos, because he was just going with a black person. I mean, it just is what it is. But, of course, no one really relies on Deontay Wilder for his boxing IQ. So, I mean, it is what it is. No one's going to take a look at Deontay Wilder for his analyzation skills. But once again, when you talk about someone that's supposed to be an analyzer, then yes, you have to put that shit aside.
Hard shit.
At least overall, you know, you have to put the shit aside to where you pick someone just because they're the same race as you or the same ethnicity as you. If you keep doing that, then you're not reliable as a, you know, an objective or logical commentator. Now, that doesn't mean overall that you can't cheer for your people, in my personal view, but if you just pick someone overall completely off a race, or you do this, you pick them to win every single time, you know, and you really don't give that much of an explanation, you just want them to win, okay, well, you know, that tells me overall that you really don't have that much of an objective or logical mindset.
He's a technical guy, too. Look what he did to Colin Smith, hitting elbows, hitting arms, hitting all this other stuff.
Absolutely.
He's going to use those same type of tactics.
And I don't know if Terrence Bud Crawford has ever felt that level of power. And on top of that, I've already stated this as well. Terrence Bud Crawford has never fought a fighter that's also as skilled nor as intelligent as a Canelo Alvarez. Now, does Canelo Alvarez have as good as feet as Terrence Bud Crawford? No. But if we compare overall the best fighter that Terrence Bud Crawford has ever fought in Errol Spence Jr., comparative overall to the fighter you know that Canelo Alvarez is. Canelo is basically better than Errol Spence Jr. in almost every single category other than the feet. I mean, literally every other category. And Errol Spence is not a super quick of foot fighter either. You know, in terms of head movement, Canelo beats him, and it's really not even close. In terms of defense, Canelo beats him. In terms of, you know, hand speed, at least at their peak, Canelo beats him. You know, especially after that Crawford fight. Jesus Christ, he looks so fucking slow. But, you know, Canelo pretty much beats him in every other category other than, once again, the feet, probably. You know, Errol Spence is not as talented nor as skilled or as smart in the ring as a Canelo Alvarez, period.
On the smaller guy, I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just talking real boxing facts. I'm not trying to...
I agree with you, sir.
Be honest.
And to be honest with you, I think that you made a good summary of both Canelo versus David Benavidez and also Crawford versus that of Canelo. Now, I would give Canelo more of a chance to beat Benavidez than what I would Crawford to beat Canelo because of the size differential. You know, and on top of that, the combined skills. Do I think that David Benavidez is as skilled as Crawford? No, of course not. But David Benavidez is clearly bigger overall, you know, than you know, Canelo Alvarez overall. But I think that Canelo can carry the weight a little bit better. And I think that he'll have better power, clearly better power for that weight class. But I mean, I don't know. You never know.
Fantasy world, because it's not what I'm in.
Are you going to continue to stay at
Agreed, sir. I like the way you think.
168 pounds?
I just wish that you could have thought a little bit more realistically about your boxing career. Unfortunately, we never really get to see Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade in a lot of those bigger fights.
Yeah, 168 pounds is a good weight class. I think there's a lot of great fights. Just the guys I mentioned are all in 168 pound weight class. I think there's nothing for me at 160, nor do I want to.
Well, you could fight Yanabek, but there's really no reason for you to take that fight because Demetrius Andrade is pretty much in a win now or pretty much break situation. Like, he's one of those NBA championship teams to where, you know, they have maybe one superstar or, you know, they have some aging superstars, you know, and they pretty much have to win within the next couple of seasons or they're done. Like, Demetrius Andrade right now, like, he's almost like the 2008 Boston Celtics. Now, in my view, not as talented, of course, as what the Celtics were. But, the 2008 Celtics, for example, that was filled with a bunch of team members that were starting to age a little bit. And on top of that, they needed to win because even though they did very good at their franchises, they had never really won shit. So they were combined with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and that of Ray Allen, and of course with some other talent as well. And they said, we got to win this shit now.
And try to make that weight anymore. I outgrown it. Like I'm big now. We all get older. We don't get younger. And there's, like I said, there's better fights at 168. And I fought the biggest guy at 168. My second fight at 168. No, like whatever. Like like it is what it is. Nobody on this side is scared to get in the ring with anybody. Win, lose, or draw. Like I'm able and I can hang in there and do what I need to do. But that time versus David was just a rough year for me.
Well, now you're starting to come up with a little bit of excuses. I mean, maybe it was, I don't know. But at the end of the day, Andrade, is that really the reason why you lost to David Benavidez? Because it was a quote-unquote rough year for you? But listen, man, I'll give the man a little bit of a break. Boxers just, they have a tough time losing. And it's not just Andrade. Canelo Alvarez made excuses when he lost in both fights that he officially lost. I've heard, even Pacquiao, of course, make a bunch of excuses when he lost. Of course, we all heard what Deontay Wilder said. I mean, Jesus Christ. I've never heard a man come up. I thought Manny Pacquiao came up with bad excuses. Like he said in one fight, I think that his socks were bad or something like that. Deontay Wilder came up with literally the dumbest excuses. And he didn't just come up with one dumb excuse. He came up with like 57 of the dumbest excuses I've ever personally heard. And of course, we've heard Tyson Fury recently make excuses after the Alexander Usyk losses and all sort of stuff, or at least the first one. We heard him claim that they gave it to the man of a war-torn country because of sympathy and all sort of stuff. So I mean, I'll give the man a little bit of a break, but I mean that's it's not the main reason why he lost to David, bro. But it is what it is.
I'm like, get over, grieving. I lost a close family member that's close to my heart. My little brother almost didn't make it either. And then I had to prepare for training. And so there's a lot of fighters, a lot of people out there in life that would have passed up the opportunity to fight David or become a 3-division world champion because of those type of situations. And you got guys that's like, oh, I'm mentally unstable for this. I can't. No. I take boxing as of my.
Or did you decide to take it at that time because you looked at it and said, you know what, this is going to be the best possible opportunity because in my mind, I can come up with these excuses that I ended up losing someone that was very important to me. And on top of that, I'm going through all this other stuff. So if I end up losing this fight, then I have those excuses within my mind so I can feel better about myself for losing at this fight because I can always say that I wasn't at 100%. A lot of boxers and a lot of athletes end up thinking that way to where they actually feel more comfortable overall, once again, taking a fight at a little bit of a disadvantage because then if they end up losing the fight, there's no pressure on them, at least in their mind, or overall they can state, oh, well, this ended up happening. That's why, once again, you see certain fighters move up to weight classes out of nowhere. The reason why they do that is because they don't really want to fight that main guy at their weight class. And then on top of that, if they end up having to eventually fight that guy at their weight class, they can state that, oh, well, I was never the same after I fought Errol Spence or after I ended up fighting Canelo or after I ended up fighting Triple G, blah, blah, blah. So part of the reason why I lost to you is because I was already a little bit more broken down and I was never the same and it was a huge mistake and I never should have did it because that's what they have to tell themselves in their mind.
Way out in life and I use it to my full ability to.
And that's why when you have Mikey Garcia or Kell Brook or Jamel Charlo moving up 2 weight classes out of nowhere, they're not fucking fooling me with that bullshit of quote-unquote achieving greatness. Now, there's certain times to where a fighter will move up a weight class or multiple weight classes in terms of achieving greatness, yes. Like when you talk about Crawford moving up, to 154, or even Crawford moving up to 168, do I believe that he's trying to achieve greatness? Yes, I do. Because he's pretty much fought everyone that he's needed to. I mean, other than maybe the exception of Jerome Butsen, if you want to claim that. But I mean, pretty much other than that, he's pretty much fought everyone that he's needed to. But when it comes to Kell Brook, he was obviously not really super hot on the idea of fighting Errol Spence immediately. When it came to Jamel Charlo, he was a little bit worried about the Crawford versus Errol Spence winner, in my personal view. And when it came to Mikey Garcia, he clearly was afraid of Lomachenko.
Set my future.
Despite what the LDBC and the media fanboys tell you.
And keep me from being contained. I like to have freedom. So that's what it does for me. So therefore, yeah, it was rough. You know, at moments in the gym, it would just hit me, and I would just like stop. Like there's no motivation. I just want to go lay down now.
Right, so you're making excuses. Once again, I'll give the man a little bit of a break, but once again, boxers overall have that type of mindset because that's how they have to live with it in order overall to live with the fact that they ended up losing.
I just want to go home. I just want to go to sleep. And you know, that would happen throughout the whole year. You know, I finally got over it, and now I'm ready to, like, you know, let's brew something up. Even though I was trying to brew something up early on, like I told you, like about February, March, for major, at least July, August. Okay, I'll be back in the ring. I think that's a good time frame. Let's make something happen. You know, so it was just a tough year for me during that time.
Yeah, I can hear in your voice. It's still a tough thing to even think about or bring up. How much did that affect you coming into that fight with David?
It affected me a lot. I mean, I don't try to use it as an excuse for my
Right, even though you just did. But, you know, anyways, continue.
performance or nothing. I'm not one of those guys. It's just now I feel comfortable.
Well, listen, bro, you're a top level athlete. You're a top level boxer, at least to a certain degree. Are you as top level as what a certain amount of your fans allege? No. But I mean, you know, you're still a very talented boxer. You had a great amateur pedigree and you had a decent career. So at the end of the day, I get it. You know, these guys have that delusional type of mindset. You have to in order to somewhat be great. And sometimes some of these athletes or some people that achieve greatness, they do that, you know, stuff to where they fake it until they make it, or sometimes they tell themselves lies in order to pretty much sleep at night or to convince themselves that they're as great as what they are. And I get it, but no, bro, you didn't just lose that fight overall because of a lack of motivation. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it.
Letting like some of the
And that's not me stating that I don't believe some of the things that Demetrius Andrade is stating about overall some of the things that ended up happening. But is that the main reason why he lost to, you know, that of David Benavidez as badly as what he did? No. Because I've seen, you know, the faults that I've seen with Andrade in that fight are the same things that I've pretty much seen with him for his whole entire career, or at least with his career arc at 160.
boxing world, media, whatever, know what was happening during that time, because people want to know what's going on with Demetrius. They want to know who I am. They want to get the parts that they don't get to see. Like, yeah, I was in a hurt state, a sad state, kind of like depressed state of mind. But at the end of the day, I got children. I have an opportunity. I have to keep moving forward because life don't stop moving. You know, life just keeps moving. At the end of the day, no matter what happens in life, and so you know, there's no pause in life. So, yeah, it's tough. You know,
I agree with that. There is no pause in life, meaning what, that you got to live life to the fullest and that you always got to be trying to go towards a goal. But at the same time, you got to be doing something that you enjoy and that you always got to be doing something that is fulfilling for you, as long as you're not hurting other people and as long as you're not causing any possible, you know, danger or any possible toxicity to other people around you. I agree with you. But anyways, that pretty much is about it. And once again, I give, you know, to talk about that last point, as Demetrius Andrade said, there is no pause in life. And I give him a great amount of credit because instead of Demetrius Andrade stating overall that, you know, I'm going to stay at 160, you know, overall, because I can make the excuse and say that I've never fought there before and I'm not fighting David Benavidez. Andrade actually lived up to his words. He didn't just talk the talk like Jamal Charlo, you know, overall, once again, being the little chihuahua that he is, you know, at 160, when it came down to claiming that he wants all these opportunities, then he turns down almost every single fucking one. No, Demetrius Andrade actually lived up to his words and tried to take the David Benavidez fight, and then he took it, you know, and he gave it a good effort, but he just wasn't good enough, nor was he talented enough. It just is what it is. And of course, the size was a little bit of a factor as well, you know, but it is what it is. But good on you, Mr. Demetrius Bubo Andrade. It appears that, you know, you're healing a little bit from that loss. Hopefully we can see you in the ring again, but we'll see. But that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see where this goes.